Good evening. My name is Jay Martin. My falls into NVY. Member of the club. Been a member of the club 2.5 years so far. Typically can't make it out to the meetings on Tuesdays because of I've got a conflict in schedule, but was able to do that tonight. I am recording and videoing. We're going to try and produce this so we can use it in some training or give it. There's people that work night shift that can't come out. And they want to participate. So we're going to try and produce this. So we are being recorded right now, video and audio right here. I'm going to sit down and present this if that's okay, just because we're so tight in the space here. But we're going to talk about APRS today. I just started learning about APRS pretty much seriously like after the storm, And we all experienced the storm differently. I had some isolation, I guess you could say, out at the lake where I live, and we were blind and had nothing for 4 days, and so I had a little bit of time to dial around on the radio and could hear what was going on. And what I heard was APRS, beaconing. And when everything went down, APRS was still happening around. And when I went to investigate that, I found that there was a crew from West Virginia, I think, that came in that set up a fill-in digipeater over in Girton, where they were trying to do some recovery on some stuff, and was watching the traffic, during that. So it kind of piqued my interest of, hey, this has got a lot more utility to it than just tracking vehicles kind of thing. So as I started to dive into it, I found out that I'd actually used this for many years of my life in the Navy, in tracking ships and doing things like that. There's a lot of the same protocols. Monitoring circuits, doing all those kinds of things. The symbology is somewhat similar, in certain instances. And when I did more research, I found out that the guy who invented it he did it while he was in the Navy. And he gave the Navy a version, and he gave the civilians a version, and a couple other things came out. So this is kind of why we had the interest in APRS, and it kind of just kind of popped up for me over the past 6 months. But there's been huge upgrades that we'll talk about. In the area, there's a big team of people that are working to make the APRS a little bit more capable around here, and so we'll cover those. There's a lot of information here, so this is what we're going to try and cover tonight. We are definitely just it's more of a sales pitch type thing. There's really not a lot of learning that's probably going to happen, just because there's it's a mode with a lot of depth to it. So. Y'all remember this guy, right? The ShamWow guy? So, but what we're really doing is we're just going to hit the tip of the iceberg on this mode and what we're doing here. So, basically, what is APRS? A lot of people think that it stands for Automatic Position Reporting System, and there may be some confusion on that because when it first came out, the name switched back and forth a couple times. But essentially, it's an automated packet reporting system because it was designed to do a lot more than just provide reports of where people were location-wise. Bob Barunga, the person who invented it or developed it, WB4APR, he's a silent key now. But back in the early to mid 80s. Worked at the U.S. Naval Laboratory and designed this protocol to work with packet radio, basically, to exchange information back and forth. He refined the program through the late 80s, and then in the early 90s and 2000s is when APRS was kind of put out there. And I have a quote from him on there, and this is one of the presentations that he's given that I've got linked in here. That talks about what his perspective of it was, back in the day, kind of thing. I've got a handout here. I don't know if I have enough, but I'm just going to send some around. If for some reason you don't get a handout, that QR code that's up in the corner there, if you scan your phone on that, you'll get a copy of that, kind of thing. And so you can go to that. That's a website that we have running around for that. But his perspective is that. Basically it was a local RF network that you can communicate on, you can send information back and forth. You can pretty much do it anywhere. The protocol is the AX25 protocol. Basically, without getting into too much detail, that is a way of sending a lot of information with just a real small amount of data. And we'll break one of the packets down, and you can see like how much information comes out of it. But there's the AX25 protocol, and then there's some other compression data that can go in there. It basically gets displayed on the screen, and it's really not fun to read. The traffic as it comes out is better to use a client, so it can interpret all that for you and give you graphical overlays. We'll talk about GPS, telemetry, all that other kind of stuff for that. The one thing that is a lot of people might get surprised is you don't need to provide a position to do APRS. You can just use it without. Some people are like, hey, I'm a private person. I don't want positions being, where I am or what I'm doing or whatnot. You can choose to just use it, in its other modes and get information, other ways using that. So, the history of it is it's been around for 40 years. It's still very efficient. There are some drawbacks to APRS, but it just depends on how it's deployed, where you're at geographically, and we'll talk about that. Here's some terminology. I know it's hard to read back there, but we're going to talk about digipeaters and iGates, right? Digipeaters are kind of like voice repeaters, but they're just moving packets around. There's a little bit of a delay when a packet comes in and it comes out because there's a traffic cop in there that decides when that packet should go or not. iGates are basically sometimes co-located with digipeaters. Sometimes there's only receive-only iGates, but that's where they'll take a packet and then they'll put it on the internet so it could just get distributed globally. So sometimes when you're reporting things, anybody in the world can see what they're at, and that's helpful for emergencies. Sometimes long distance communication, if you want to do it that way. There's ways to do it over RF, but everything touches the internet at some point. And if you want to leverage the internet, you can do that. APRS is the backbone of the internet, backbone of APRS. It's not a central server or anything like that located anywhere. It just it moves traffic around. There are services that leverage the APRS that store all the information so we can look at it. One of the websites that you may have visited before is like APRS.fi. That's one of the ones that does that. We'll talk about paths and how packets get routed. MICE encoding, again, that's a compression. It goes on the front. So just some terminology to kind of throw out there. If you haven't been exposed to APRS in the past, then this might be new to you. Who's worked with APRS like 20 years or more ago? I hadn't really looked at it for 20 years, 10 years, anything like that? No? I know a couple people said they'd come in and used APRS a while ago and just kind of haven't seen the updates that it's done. I think you might be surprised at some of the capabilities that it has out there. Since the internet has been leveraged with the mode, there's a lot more information that's out there, but you can definitely find some new utility for things like that. Let's see here. A little bit about the type of gear that can do APRS. Basically, any radio that you can connect to a TNC or a computer or a digirig that has 2 meters on it, you can do APRS. There's devices. You can see like this device right here is called a MobiLink TNC, and so that's a Bluetooth capable TNC you can hook to your phone. You can see there's one here as well that's hooked to a phone. There's apps on your phone that you can do that. There's folks that have mobile installs. Kenwood 710s. Kenwood's one of the radios that's has APRS, true APRS in it. Some of the other ones you got to kind of trick it and get it to move around. Like some of the Anytones, they'll beacon, but they won't get messages or anything like that. So there's a variety of ways you can APRS. Some of it's just beaconing. Some of it's full-blown messaging back and forth. And And anybody not get one over here? Got an extra one in this?
Jay, they have to be digital radios, though?
No. This is the analog FM
And
line of sight.
did you say it's 2 meters specific, though?
Yeah, it's because the frequencies are. That's a great question. You looking at my slides? Because the frequencies are set.
I'm with you now.
Yeah, set where you're at. And so, like, whenever I go, I do a lot of traveling, and whenever I get somewhere, I don't know how strong it's going to be in here, but I'll turn on my radio, and I'm waiting to hear if I can hear APRS around. And if you can, literally, you could drop me off anywhere on the planet, and if I can hear that noise, I can find out what the weather is around me. I can find out the closest repeaters to me. I might be able to find the closest hospital or police station. It just depends on how the area is being taken care of. The information is only good as what's put in it, right? So hopefully we'll get to some point today where we can do some demonstrations. But if we can't do that, then we got this coming Saturday where we plan to do a lot of like the show and tell of this is how you get these messages to go and do and everything. So in North America, it's 144.390. If you go overseas, you can see you can see how they're broken down. But if you travel anywhere, take your HT, and if you can get those frequencies and work on them, that's where you'll find out. You'll be able to see what kind of traffic it is. If you want to check it out before you even go, you can get on APRS.fi and see what kind of traffic's happening around that area. So say if you were going to like Sydney, you want to see how much traffic's happening in Sydney, Australia. You can get down there and actually watch the traffic happen, as it is, and you can see if it's RF or if it's internet, traffic or whatnot. So good stuff. It's everywhere, Some of the core features, when you look at this is a snapshot of our area around here. Again, sorry that the screen is it's hard to see, but you see a lot of information there. And being able to determine what the symbology is or what the lines are, once you start playing around with it a little bit more, you get a little bit more accustomed to what you're seeing. Those blue circles are all weather stations, believe it or not. So, I was thinking, hey, I should maybe set up a weather station at the house and have APRS, put it out there and this and that. Well, there's a guy like 3 miles from me that has one. So I just use his, to find out what's going on weather-wise. And it's super easy to do, to get weather updates and information that comes in. And when the wind gets blowing bad, the guys down in Greenville will say, oh, the wind's 20 knots, this or that or whatever. Not at my house, it was different, and so I check his weather station and I see that he's spiking at 35 knots or, whatever, that's happened down there. So you can get real-time weather from all those blue stations that are out there. You see people driving around, these are tracks here of people who are beaconing as they're driving. And so they may be beaconing at certain intervals, or they may have what's called smart beaconing enabled, which it puts traffic out at when you make turns and things, so you can kind of have your track. But if you want to have a family member kind of track where you're going, if you're coming home or going on a long trip, you can beacon and they can pull this stuff up and see it. And the thing is they can pull it up on the internet, so somebody who's not a ham can get on the internet and pull this stuff up. So it's good if you go out back hiking or driving or whatever, you can do that. It's all dependent on how the place is set up and how it's established geographically, what equipment's out there. Obviously, if there's no APRS equipment or not a lot of digipeaters or whatnot, there's no traffic. But you can research that before you go ahead of time. There are some organizations that use this for emergencies and tactical and whatnot. It's all over the clear. It's all over in the clear. So that's kind of gone down over the years. But for a while there, you'd have actual emergency recoveries and things going on where APRS was a part of the information sharing that was happening out there. One of the biggest drawbacks of APRS is it's not very reliable. Like if you're waiting to exchange information back and forth, say to try to have a conversation, that might not work because the way messages are being sent around, sometimes collisions will occur, and when those collisions occur, that packet's lost. You're never going to get that information back. And so it's not good really to have a conversation, but if you want to put in there that I've broken my leg in the woods, I need help, and beacon that out every minute, one of those, two of those are eventually going to get out. You know, they're going to give a timestamp, they're going to give a location. You know, so it's all very situational on how you want to use it and when you want to use it and where. But these are the core features of it, and we'll keep going here.
Is this a website?
So that right there is a website, APRS.fi. It's on there. Yep. Let's see.
Another question, Jack.
Yes, sir.
So, will the signal get out better than, say, just voice only? Say you're up in the hills and you're on a trail somewhere and you need contact. You can't get through just by calling, trying to reach a regular voice repeater. Can that get out?
Well, so what I'll say is during the storm, when there was no RF coming out of Bear Wallow or very little, you know, you can move traffic all over the place. But when it's competing with other RF, the power needs to be up usually a little bit higher. So like an HT isn't always going to do the job for you. You might need a little bit more power there. But if you had, say, like a digipeater in your car you built, something that has, say, 50 watts or whatever, and you're up in the hills and have an HT, and you're trying to get traffic to your car, that's your goal. And once your car gets it, it forwards it to the big area digipeater, which is another good question. I think you're looking at my slides too. Then you can move traffic that way. So, you know, it's very situational. You got to kind of know, this isn't something like you just turn on during an emergency. You got to play with it. You got to kind of understand it, how it works when it's supposed to, and then how it works when it's not working. So, kind of going on to the question that you asked, this is just a general, graphic of what we're, looking at here. And so, wide area digipeater, we'll call the KN4 KWA-15 machine on Bear Wallow a wide area digipeater, right? So that gets into town here, gets over to Chambers, it gets everywhere, right? And it sends messages. That machine is designed to do APRS and APRS only. It's very good at it, and it's hooked up there to a max track and on 25 watts or something like that. And it's not very difficult to have it up there, but having the right equipment is key, because as soon as we put that thing up there, the stats, I'll show you some stats a little bit later, of how much traffic that thing is pushing is crazy. Also, we've seen an increase in people participating in APRS now because they can hear it, they can see it, and reporting on it. So that's a testament to that station. And then Zach also put the same station up at Spivey Mountain. So, that's part of the upgrade that's happening around here. So you've got the wide area digipeater that would be up at a good high location. That will be receiving, those are weather stations up here, backpackers out in the woods, cars. There'll be people who are just running their iGate at the house there. You can go home tonight and fire up one of the clients I'm going to tell you about and start contributing to the network by putting stuff in via the internet. You don't have to have RF to get it in, but you can contribute that way if that's your only other way that you have. Here's an RF user, somebody who's doesn't have their internet hooked up, but they're still communicating back and forth. And so they're all getting these messages that are coming back and forth. And so when the car sends a message up to the mountain, the RF user on the other side of the mountain also sees that message, and so they can communicate if they wanted to or whatnot. Again, we're using FM, line of sight, analog to go back and forth, from here. You have some stations which are called like a fill-in digipeater, right? And I got an example. I have a fill-in digipeater because you can go from like the center of my street where I live and walk a quarter mile and go from hearing everything from Bear Wallow to hearing nothing at all. And so I set my digipeater up in line with a good line of sight to Bear Wallow, so everybody who's in the area around there can send traffic to my station and then push it around, right? So my station's a little bit lower power, not as high speed, but it gets traffic moved around mountains, and we'll show you some examples of that. So, and then on the bottom here is where you'll see your client that comes out. Again, APRS without a client is not fun. It's just a bunch of words. You know, they don't really make sense. It's machine readable stuff that comes out. But after a while, you can start to see it, and you can start to see what paths are and what people are putting on there. So it's kind of neat. Okay, digipeaters and eye gates, and so I said we're going to talk about these a little bit earlier. So the path, this is something that kind of just threw me for a little while. Had to really look at it, had to really send traffic to see how it goes. When you set your radio up and when you set your software up, it's going to ask you what type of path that you want your packets to go on. And there's some general rule of thumbs that you'll have out there, like an HT would normally be a wide 1-1, comma wide 2-1. That would be, you know, what you would put out there for an HT, something on your hip that's going out there. You could have like a fill-in digipeater. That would typically be like a wide 1-1, because what you're trying to do is that the job of that machine is to talk to the big machine on the hill with, you know, anything around. It's not its job to rebroadcast information out over multiple times here. And so you'll see with the graphic here, if you're driving around in your car is a 1-1, comma wide 2-1. You're sending out packets as they go. Say you're reporting your position, and it goes into a fill-in digipeater because you're in an area behind a mountain that can't see anything. What happens is the path decrements as it goes, and so that number, that -1 will disappear, or that -2 will disappear as it goes through a digipeater. And once it gets to 0, it stops moving through traffic, right? So RF is happening from, RF is happening from your mobile user to, say, your fill-in station right here. And so this went with a wide 1-1 and a wide 2-1, so it went with both of them. It lands in here. This station is a wide 1-1 path. So what it's going to do, it's going to take your packet and it's going to send it to the big digipeater up here. When it gets to the big digipeater, the wide 1-1 will have decremented down to 0, so that gets stripped off the path, and then it starts working on the 2-1 to get moved around the network. And so when it gets to the high level or the wide area digipeater, the 2-1 is it's going to send out a packet to the next digipeater out, and if you raise the number, they'll continue to go out, right? So all that is happening, you know, almost near real time. But as it goes out, your position is going to get reported via RF to all those digipeaters that it's talking to. When it gets to 0 on both ends, the digipeater gets it and it says, I don't have to send this out anymore, and so it just drops it, and then that packet's done. There's no more movement around the network. So you want to keep your paths kind of in line, because if you start putting high numbers like a wide 3-3 or whatever, you're starting to put RF out over wide areas, and the guys in Chicago don't want to know, you know, that you're at Jackson Park right now, you know, via RF, and you're lighting up all those machines as you go there. So, but that's pretty standard. Is a wide 2-1 for HT, wide 1-1 for a stationary mobile. I'm sorry, for a stationary fill-in, and then your wide level they're what, 2-1 up there as well, right? Yeah. So even the wide level digipeters are up there. It's very confusing, hard to explain. You kind of got to just look at it a little bit and see where things go. We'll look at a packet and see how it's kind of broken down. But the one thing you definitely don't want to do is digipeat more than you need to, because you start putting too much RF out there, and then those collisions are going to happen, and other people's messages are going to happen. So it's part about being a responsible user for the system. We said the role of eye gates, again, as this moves through the system, if it hits a digipeater that has access to the internet, it'll hand that packet off. It'll still send out via RF if it's got more legs on its path, but a lot of times the high-level digipeaters are also eye gates as well. You know, so you'll be able to see that show up on the internet at some point. You can configure the digipeaters to go from the internet to RF to go. I mean, there's a multitude of ways to do that, to do pass and things. But a lot of times, you can't control that. So when you show up to an area, you just got to kind of expect that you're going to have basic either digipeating or limited eye-gate area. This area happens to be set up just really well compared to a lot of places I've been lately, especially with the upgrades that we've had. So remember, don't over digipete, and if you don't know, ask a friend.
So you can only see the current packet, you can't see packets from the past.
You can. There's websites you can go back and look at them, and they'll hold them for. Some of them will hold them for a day. Some of them will hold them for a year. I think there's one that's like an archive one that you can go back, and that's what I'm going to look for Bob's. When he did a trip down to Antarctica, he was beaconing down there, and if we can pull the, he's got.
I can go back years on FI.
Yeah. Oh, can you? Okay.
On your radio, if you
No.
miss the packet on the radio, you can't see it.
No.
It's it back in the radio.
Yeah, it's like it missed you. It's like someone threw something at you and it missed you. It's got to hit your radio.
It's not like text messaging.
Yeah.
It doesn't know that you didn't get it.
Yeah.
So that's what, like Joe was saying, it's not
Yeah.
100% reliable.
You could send some stuff that requires acknowledgement to let them know that it was delivered, but it's definitely not 100% foolproof. Again, very situational for what you have there. Okay, so I just put this one back up just to kind of give you an idea of maybe our geography of what it looks like. Chambers, Spivey, and York, South Carolina. Those are some like really busy stations that are out there that are moving traffic around, and all of it comes through Bear Wallow. And I got a graphic here that's pretty neat. It'll show you how much traffic we're getting in. If you're driving around town and you can hear Bear Wallow and you want to send messages out to Haywood or whatever, you'll definitely be able to do that. Because one of the two stations will pick you up and get you going out there. And you can do that all over RF. You don't need the internet or anything like that to do those. So this is some of the geography that I wanted to just talk to you about real quick. I did a VARA presentation, and I showed this graphic with VARA, and a lot of people told me it was kind of enlightening to understanding how FM gets around the area here. So these are all the main areas where we've got digipeaters at. I don't say we've got, but there are digipeaters that people have put up and own there. If you look at like a shaded graphic to see what the topology of the area is, you can see Chambers, Spivey, Bear Wallow. There's just a lot of hills and valleys and whatnot. And so there's sections all in there where you're not going to hear any of this stuff. But like if you get just south of this area here, I regularly get packets from Charlotte. I mean, all very, very far distances. I mean, it's very surprising, how you get down there. But this area is generally covered pretty good. But again, we're dealing with a lot of mountains and valleys and whatnot, and we're set good. But again, it's not 100% reliable. If you look at how traffic is passed around, this is about 6 hours worth of traffic that happened maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and you can see who's using it, where they're coming in from, and what the coverage areas are, right? So you get Chambers, Bear Wallow, York. That's like the big thoroughfare here. Tony KK4 FFE tells me that he gets a lot of stuff from Kentucky and Tennessee out there, and so that makes it cross all those mountains to get over there, and then put it into Bear Wallow. Bear Wallow you can see is a traffic cop for just about everything. A lot of stuff to the south, some stuff to the east. That's down there. The folks up at Woody's now, I think some of their first responders use that, because I've seen fire trucks and police reported up in that area. I don't know if it's somebody there that's doing that, but you can see where the big areas of the network are. Out here, this user that's out here that was working Chambers, you can see that this area has well coverage for APRS and whatever they were doing out there, but you can see a lot of traffic that was happening for that. So if you're somewhere in the mix of here, you should be able to hear it if you got a tall enough antenna, you know, and whatnot. If you can't, then that's when you want to like consider putting in a fill-in digipeater, you know, something that kind of help the network out or help your area out. And so if you want to participate in APRS and you don't have good signal through your location, you just got to do a little bit of analysis to find out and see if your location's a good spot for a fill-in. My location happened to be a good spot for a fill-in, and the way it ended up working. Oh, that's just another view of it. This is just a wider area view. You can see stuff coming in from Kentucky, going to Chambers, going over to Bear Wallow, down to York, and you know, if you keep zooming out, you can just see more and more of the network and how things are moving around. So fill-in digipeater, kind of told you how that works. Is, you know, for my use case or my situation, you know, I can sometimes get to Chambers, I can sometimes get to Bear, or I can mostly all the time get to Bear Wallow, and I do have York kind of picking my station up every once in a while. But because of these mountains here out at Lake Lure, this is all dark. Nothing gets past there. I can't get any kind of RF. Bear Wallow's, what, 4,200 feet, and then it's got to go through by Chimney Rock and Young's Mountain over there, and it just kind of shuts everything down. And so when I fire up my fill-in digipeater, now I can travel around this area and I can report in because my packet gets sent, goes to my house. My machine that's set up as a wide 1-1 digipeater forwards it up to the Bear Wallow, and then you know the rest of the path will happen on there. And so I did a quick test of that, and you know I put this is Snake Island out at the lake there, and I put digipeater right around that area. And I drove my truck. I think I went to the post office that day, and I was doing smart beaconing, and so it was determining when the beacons would happen based off of my turns and my speeds and all that kind of stuff. And you could see, like, from this area down, you can't hear any RF. From just across the lake up, you can't hear any RF. The channel for RF into the lake to Bear Wallow is basically along this line here, and it's maybe a mile wide, if that. You know, it's just like a channel.
You can't hear Bear Wallow, or you can't reach it?
Both. Both. You can't. In some areas, there's nothing out there. You can't hear anything. You can't do it. But if I can get my digipeater in that lane, now I can drive around the areas where it's normally nothing. Can't get in. Can't get out. And you can see all the packets that were sent and forwarded up. You know, that way. And so that's how the fill-in digipeater works, you know, for that. And we'll have some of those at the demo this Saturday. You'll see how easy the equipment is to kind of set up for that. And literally, I have my 705 at home connected via USB, running a sound modem right now. And I mean, it's just running away doing its thing. Yes, sir.
So digipeater transmits and receives on the same frequency?
It does. It's all simplex, you know, 144.390, and comes back and forth on that. And so if you have areas that, you know, you don't, and you want to APRS, like I said, you can easily set up a digipeater. You can use an HT. I mean, it's just trying to get RF around certain areas, and it ends up working good. So I don't run it all the time, but when I want to do some APRS stuff, I'll run it out there. There isn't a lot of people. There's a guy named Dave that lives in Lake Lure. I forget what his call is. I see him out there every once in a while, but nobody else does ham stuff out there. So.
Jay, I might have missed it, but what's the event Saturday where you're doing a demo?
Well, I'll talk about that towards the end. That's it's not my event. It's the Roadshow Amateur Radio Club is doing their,
Over by Jansenito's?
Yeah, like we did with Bar last
great.
year. Yeah.
All right, that one. Thanks.
Yeah. So decoding APRS, this I don't want to spend too much time on this because I think I gave you a link to a 51-page quick reference guide on it. Literally, there's endless amount of information on how to do that. But I just want to show you quickly how a packet's broken down. All right, so that's what traffic looks like. Not as fun to read as some of the graphics. But the example that we have down there, and then yeah, I've got the link there for the quick reference. You can see a packet that's come out from an individual, what it's going through, who's seeing it, what the symbology is, what the location is, what the power is at the station, and then there's just some general text in there, right? So I can see all that because I've been staring at stuff like this for 6 months. But if you really want to kind of break it down, you can go through and you can see that the source station is going to be the first section there. And then the second station, that ADPW16, there's a code that's assigned to, TNCs, software modems, hardware equipment that's out there. But if you really want to know what that station is operating equipment-wise, you can pull up that second code there. And so I forgot what the 3-in-1's like APIN or something like that.
16 or something.
Yeah, something like that. So you can find out what kind of equipment is up there. This person happens to be running Direwolf, which is a really good piece of software for digipeating on PCs. I think it works on Linux too. The next group is the stations that are hearing it and passing it around. And so if anything's being used as a fill-in or if the station is digipeating it, you can kind of see its route that it's going through. And so sometimes, like I know people's call signs around here, so if Patrick's out driving around and I send a message to him, I know it's going to go through KN4 KWA-15 and then get shot down to where he's at in Greenville, kind of thing. And so if it doesn't, then that's interesting. If it, say it goes through York or something like that, well, why did it go through York this time? You can kind of go back and see how the system's responding to you on that. The little exclamation point could be your type of data that's coming through. It could be an @ symbol, it could be a comma, it could be 40 different things, but it just basically tells the machine this is what you're expecting to see. You're expecting to see a lat long, you're expecting to see some text, whatever it is. This one happens to be an exclamation point, but it's telling the computer what other types of data fields that we're gonna look at. The lat long, it'll give you the decimal lat long format and latitude and longitude. The only one thing is instead of even in the slash here, they don't just use the slash to kind of do the lat long. That's part of the symbology that it's telling the system to use. And so again, everything's really compressed and there's a lot of information in this tight little packet that comes out. PGN information is or PHG, sorry. PHG, the dash is a symbol, believe it or not, so I'll show you how that kind of translates to a table that you can look up and see what kind of symbology that's happening out there. So nothing's wasted, it's all utilized. Here's the symbology chart. Here's that backslash that we had. Here's the dash, and then that's what's going to show up on a client that shows up. These are all the different symbologies that you can pick from on there. You can see there are some emergency stuff. There's like tornadoes. There's fire engines, police stations, all different kinds of things on here. Really, you can use whatever you want, but just be a good steward. Don't report a fire somewhere. You might get some people round up on it for that. Use icons that are appropriate for what you're doing. I like sometimes using the color code icons. If I send a green 5, that means I'm good and everything's good. If I said a red 2 or 1, maybe I need some help. So maybe a couple people know that. There's also SSIDs that are part of the call sign when you send these out. So those are the secondary station identifiers. If you've got a vehicle that has APRS in it, your vehicle is going to be a 7 or a 9, -9 station. So you would have N2NVY-9 would be maybe your mobile and your vehicle, and then a -7 would be your HT. So that way when you got out of your vehicle, you turned your HT on, now you're beaconing -7. If you're working with somebody else in APRS, so okay, they're not in their vehicle anymore, they're on their HT that's going in. And again, you can set it up where your vehicle is a digipeater that gets, maybe only listening to you for your packets, to send it in to get them up to, you know, to the bigger ditch repeater for that. So there's 15 stations you can do for that. You can really assign whatever you want for them, but here's just some guidelines for it, for those in there. And let's see. And then anything after, you know, after that information, after the symbology is considered like a comment. So you can put whatever you want in there. There's only so many characters that you can present for that. I forget what the number is. It's like Twitter. It's 100 and something, I think, that you can send out there. But you can put in there, hey, you know, I need help, or I'm monitoring, you know, 2 meter simplex, or meet me at the barn. You know, whatever you want to put in there, you can put in there, and it'll go, you know, for that. I'm going to make the presentation available for everybody at the end, so that way you can, if you want to check some of this stuff out or click some of those links, you can do that. Let's see, clients and websites. There's you know, lots of different ways to digest APRS. Reading traffic is probably not the best way to do it. It gets real bored real quick for that. When you get this client here, it takes all that information, and again, we'll put it into a graphical interface. And the one that most folks have probably been to is APRS.fi. That's a web-based application that is connected to both the RF side of things and the internet side of things. It shows anything that's happening and being transmitted, as long as it gets to the internet at some point. So you can go back, you can do a little bit of research. I thought I guess you could probably go back in time on there. I think if you don't use a SSID for a while, it'll drop off after a certain amount of time, you know, for that. Pinpoint on the bottom is pretty slick. It's a newer application that's out there, really easy to set up, really easy to do, allows you to do some messaging right from the desktop there. That is a Windows application. You can see there's a communications window you monitor, the graphic area. If you have a GPS hooked up, it'll report that. So some people may have like a laptop mounted in their vehicle and you know, track that. And then you could read messages, you know, as it's coming down. And then APRS ISCE or 32 is an older application that's out there. That's the one that I used for some of the network analysis out there. It's got some, to me, a little bit more technical tools in there, that if you're wanting to just see more of how things are laid out, where they're going, lots of features, not really documented very well. So you got to kind of go in there with exploratory, you know, time in mind to figure out how everything works. We were out in the parking lot today, and somehow I turned on grid squares on mine. I have no idea how I did it. And how long did that kick my butt for?
It's a good
10 minutes, yeah. I needed to be doing other stuff, and here I'm fighting with grid squares on there. So that one's a little bit good. But I've got experience with both Pinpoint, actually all three of them, and Pinpoint is pretty good. That's one of the ones.
256 bytes.
256, okay. Thank you. I knew it was a lot. So, believe it or not, there's a weekly net for APRS, and so that's using a messaging system. There's several bots or servers that are out there that will do certain things, and so when you send a packet, whether it goes via RF or over the internet, it'll get to this bot that's somewhere that's probably connected to the internet, and it will either forward information out or it'll provide information back. And so there's the net that's on a Thursday, they use a group messaging feature that's available on there. And what happens is, starting at midnight GMT to midnight GMT the next day, if you log in to their message group, they'll put you in the log, you know, and you'll get in. If you log in and stay logged in, you'll get like 600 messages back, which will like overload the if it's on RF side, it'll overload the RF side. But you can do it on the internet side if you want to see who's checking in to do that. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll check into that net and then I'll immediately check out, and I might get like 5 or 6 messages that kind of work their way out for that, but you don't really want to stay into that net all day. Especially if you're on RF, you're gonna blow up the system.
How do you check in RF?
So what you would do is you would do a message, and you would do it to, instead of like a call sign, it's called an answer server. And I can do it here before we go. I'm trying to get through the slides so we can
Go
do
ahead.
some stuff here. But you go in and you CQ the answer server, and you give it the group name that they're going to use. So it's Hams on the Go, so HOTG, and then you give them some text that you want, and their server records that and puts it on a website. And then the next day that they report, just like One Link Wednesday, they report who checked in with them. So is Danny still here? So like if you wanted to use APRS for the bike ride, we could create a group, Blue Ridge Radio Club, whatever, and everybody who's APRS in that day can log into that group. We created our own self, and anytime somebody sends a message to that group, everybody in that will get messages, as long as they've been beaconing throughout the day and they know that they're in the area. So you can do that if you want for it. For neighborhoods, you can set up, and this is all on the fly. Like we can go out and do one in the parking lot right now, kind of thing. So kind of neat to be able to do that. A couple other use cases. One on the side here, this individual figured out how to hook up APRS to the spot emergency, like adventure GPS, those GPSs you take out in the woods that if you hurt yourself, you push a button and it sends up satellite signal to get emergency services to you. Well, they figured out how to hook up APRS to that, and in addition to getting their services in, they could send messages out that other people can get, to let them know where they're at or what their condition is. The middle one, and these will all be linked in the presentation. When you go check them, you'll go right to that page. They're off Facebook too, so you have to have a Facebook account to be able to see them. This one, an individual was messing around with that Mike E compression setting. Mike E was designed for first responders or special use. It's set as part of the packet and can identify, whether a unit is on duty, off duty, has emergency or whatnot. And this individual had sent out an emergency beacon accidentally, and so everybody within that area's radio went off and said, "Hey, there's an emergency over here. Somebody needs some help." And people actually called the police to help this individual out where they were. Now they found out it was an accident, but in real world, you could definitely do that. You could send out an emergency beacon, and you will get somebody either on the radio or on the phone or doing that. So there's a couple of videos online on how to test that or play around with that and do it safely. I definitely would check those things out to see how that goes down. And this last one is actually a gentleman in Kentucky for the floods that they had a few months ago, that they were in a similar situation to us. They didn't have any way to get out or anything, and they used APRS from their location to communicate over to wherever they needed to in there, and that's his story on how that worked there. So there are winter field day, like I said, parades and bike races, training. It's just something you really can't just pick it up and start doing it. You got to kind of be familiar with the mode, familiar with the pros and cons with it, and again, situational where you could use it. There's also APRS on the HF side, and then the ISS has a digipeater on it as well. I'm not real familiar at all with the HF or the satellites that do APRS right now. These are some of the ones that I was able to find online, but yeah, if you dial in on 30 meters there, you'll be able to hear APRS traffic that's happening. There's not many stations that are based in the United States for that. I haven't messed with it at all, but there's a little bit of a different settings for your computer. Normal APRS is I think 1200 baud. HF's going to be 9600 baud, so you have to change your setup on that. But if you wanted to get a packet out to a place far away, you could do HF, and if there's an iGate there, then you could report what's happening maybe locally where you are, from a very far distance for that. Let's see. Yeah, I don't really have much more information about the satellite or the space station side on there. I just know that you can do it. This is some of the more interesting things that are happening lately. Is that Meshtastic is a mode or a way to communicate that right now is kind of open to everybody. But Meshtastic is also available on the UHF band as well. And so for hams have figured out how to use Meshtastic and APRS together. And basically what they do is they make Meshtastic nodes communicate with iGate software. And so you can pass traffic on Meshtastic and it can get forwarded via iGate to the internet, and you can essentially send traffic around APRS that way. And so very, very new technology that's happened. It's developing very fast. That's out there. There's a lot of people doing projects on it. I think more people in Europe than are around here. But the guys up at West Cars do I think they do a Wednesday night ARESnet as well, and they take WinLink check-ins normally during their net. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I saw them that they also received a APRS check-in via Meshtastic. And so somebody around here is doing it, and so I'm looking out for traffic for that to see, because that'll just be interesting to see how we go. May go down this road next, but as you can see, there's a lot of information, a lot of details about this mode that keeps you kind of busy. This is great if you're a tech too. If you're worried about upgrading to general or whatever, if you want to get into this, you can be a tech and do it all you want. You don't really have to. There's enough information and stuff that you can do that'll keep you busy. That's for sure. Just some best practices. Again, smart beaconing. If your device has that, it's good to put that on, because what it'll do is it's beaconing only when it needs to. And so you can set that if your car turns 90 degrees, then put out a packet. Or if you're going 60 miles an hour, you might beacon a little bit slower than if you're going 20 miles an hour. It might beak out, walking, it may stretch that out to 3 or 4. So it'll decide all the variables, based off what it thinks you're doing. You could just beacon, like I think normally, if I don't have smart beaconing on something and I have it in my vehicle, I think I beacon every 3 or 5 minutes or something like that, and maybe 8 out of 10 packets make it in, kind of thing. So there's a little bit of items that won't make it, packets that won't make it. Keep your paths short. People don't need to know via RF, several states away where you're at and what you're doing. So they can still see that. They can get on the internet, and there's really no reason to beacon wider than that. Talked about symbologies and SSIDs. Don't use a fire icon for your location, because like I said, somebody might be looking at that. And then SSIDs, like one of the ones, is it 14 is for truckers? Is that the SSID 14?
No.
9 or 14. One of them's kind of for truckers, over the road truckers, and so they'll use that. You'll see them kind of zooming around there. One's for balloons. You don't want to be using the balloon
7
one.
for your HT.
Yeah. So kind of stick with that. And comments, just relevant or tactical information, to go in there. You don't have much space, and so if you're trying to get a message out, put that in there. Or if, like I say, you're telling people where you're monitoring, where you're operating from, you can put those in there and get your information. Worst practices, high beacon rates, wide paths, useless information in there. And then on the HF side, if you get on the HF, not many stations out there. So if you have too many people, then traffic's going to get passed out there. So you have to kind of listen. It's kind of like when you're doing VARA HF or anything HF wise. You got to listen to the band, make sure it's clear, pass your traffic, and then you can verify that it went either through the APRS side of things or APR S.FI, or see it come back via acknowledgement if it's a message that kind of goes out there. Let's see. Some other examples of information. again, sorry it's hard to see. I posted a lightning. This is the object. It said, hey, there's lightning that's happening around here. You can kind of see, it pulled some information from the local civilian weather observation program. I didn't put any of that in, but it told me the temperature and the pressures that were happening, rain, and I just said that lightning was reported out there. And that just was there for 15 minutes and then disappeared, kind of thing. So if you've got people who are reporting things for you, say at an EOC or whatever, you can, put things out there and you can make them stay longer if you want, or you can have them. I think the 610 repeater has an object that it reports every 45 minutes to say, hey, we're out here, kind of thing.
Battery voltage, temperature.
Yeah, yep. Has
So
all
I don't
that.
have to drive up on the mountain all the time.
There is a gateway for the APRS and WinLink to talk to one another, and so you can actually retrieve full messages via APRS if you want. It's all done in the clear, so if it's just something basic, that's fine. But if if you really need that message and you need to get it that way, you can pull it out there. Anybody can get on APRS.fi, could read that message and see who's from and to and whatnot. But if you put the word WinLink in your comment section, in this general comment section, when you have a WinLink message, one time a day the WinLink server will let you know, hey, you've got an email on here. So it'll just pop up if you've got a message capable system, it'll pop up and say, hey, you've got one message waiting for you in WinLink. So I wanted to show you that, but you never know when it's going to come. It's just like throughout the day, it'll kind of
Are you looking
populate.
at this on a client or what?
Yeah, this is using both Pinpoint and APRS 32. The Windows clients on there. But if whatever you have that's message capable, like your radio, if you put WinLink in your comment line for your SSID, when you fire that up, if you got a WinLink message, you'll get a message back for it. So any message capable, service. Let's see. You can have people message you while you're sitting at your terminal or whatnot, and those messages will come in. Any kind of special Mikey, the emergencies. This individual transmits special status all the time, and so I always get this message for him. But if I wanted to send them a message back, I could. I just hit click on that button, hit reply, and off it goes. But if, say, he was somebody doing search and rescue and was out forward deployed or something, and they say, okay, well, we're going to work from this time to this time, they can change their status from on duty to off duty, to kind of communicate back with the EOC of what's happening for that. Here's an email that I sent from one of the clients. Literally put an email address in, and it sets the message up for you for everything. And it went from my station to my actual Gmail account, and it was like instantaneously. Kind of get that over there. There's bulletins that you can kind of send out, and bulletins go if you send it via RF, they go to everybody within 500 miles?
200 kilometers.
200 kilometers. Anybody who's listening on RF within 200 kilometers. So if you have a big announcement or something that you want to put, or if there's, whatever it is, we've been putting out the demo that we're having on the 10th of May, putting a link out there so local area folks who are monitoring the bulletins, they actually get this message on their machine. They click the link, they go to the website, and it kind of sets it up. This has been around for years and years and years. It's just not used much, and you can see when you go look at the bulletins on APRS.fi, there's not many that are out there. There's a couple users that are what I would call power users that actually link this stuff into weather, and they distribute weather information via APRS to their local communities.
KM4ACK.
Yeah, he's
near
one of the
Nashville.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that I have linked on the online document for you there.
Yeah, he does tornadoes, things like that.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So, again, we're just scratching the itch on some of these. I'm just trying to show you some of the stuff that might be relevant for us around here. This is a really cool one that if you have, if you dial in APRS on your radio, you're going to hear all this crazy noise all day long. You don't want to hear that beeping and squeaking and everything. If you put a 100 hertz tone on that channel, and what it'll do is it'll stop all the noise from coming in, right? Because digipeaters do not pass on the tone. It'll strip it of the tone, and it'll just go out over 144.390. If another user puts on the tone as well, and you all are driving around, as you get closer to one another within simplex range, you're going to hear APRS traffic on your radio. So if you hear APRS traffic on your radio, that's another user that's near you who's beaconing on 100 with 100 hertz tone. So you can actually get on the voice onto the APRS frequency, and all you got to do is say your call sign, their call sign. You have to say voice alert, but then QSY to whatever you want to QSY, and then you can have your simplex contact on there. So kind of neat. I've been driving around with it for a while now. I've heard a couple packets go by, but I don't think that there were people nearby. I've tried to reach out and haven't heard anybody on there. But it's kind of neat to do that, because then you can hear, you can set up, contacts or you can make contacts doing that way. I've driven around the country listening to the 2-meter calling frequency and never heard anybody on there. The only time I got a hold of anybody was again during the storm. A couple people around the lake were just monitoring that, and we stood up a little daily net from that. But on the highway, I haven't really heard anybody on calling that much. So voice alert's a pretty cool thing to do for it in other areas. All right, I think we got to most of that. That QR code on the right will get you again to the slides and notes. I'll post them up, after here. We just are really getting to the tip of the iceberg. The whole point of this presentation for me was at least just pique your interest. There's way too much to talk about, going in depth. I could literally do another hour just on APRS F5, just on the website. One. There's just a lot of information, a lot of tools that you can do on there. However you want to utilize the mode, you can. What I will say is that the APRS that's kind of been set up around here, Martin, Carl, Charles worked hard to get the one up for Bear Wallow. Zach's got his machine up at Spivey. Those are really two. They're called 3-in-1 Digipeater. What's the other?
WX3.
WX 3-in-1. They're made by a Polish guy, and they're just great machines, and they run traffic really well. The fact that we have two of them. Chambers, those two are they're both digis and iGates. Chambers is only a digi, as far as I know, and that thing passes a ton of traffic too. So we can get traffic around the area. That's not the issue. It's how to use it, for whatever the use case, whether it be a bike race, whether it be just for tracking vehicles, or helping emergencies or whatever, kind of thing. But you got to kind of learn the lay of the land. Learn where stuff's at, see how it's talking, and then you can really start to use it to your advantage, for that. If you don't want to do any of that, you want to participate in APRS, there's apps for both Android and iOS, and all you got to say is beacon my location, and it'll do it all over the internet, and you can contribute that way if you want, for that. You can do all the messaging, things like that, but the RF side is a little bit more challenging and fun to do. So I do a little bit of both. I'm like a 60-40 guy. I have 60 RF, 40 internet. I like to leverage that when I can on there. So let's see. I think that's it. Any questions? I'll try to maybe call up and do a couple of queries here real quick. Any questions, or what did I leave out? I know I left something out that.
Nothing. Hey, Jay.
Yes, sir.
We do use APRS with the bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really handy because, the ride will cover 100 miles. And Charles can be there net control with his monitor, and the folks at the bike officials, they love it too.
Yeah.
But bottom line, our SAG vehicles, most of them have APRS.
Yeah.
And so if we get a call, somebody broke down on East Fork Road over past Brevard, that means I don't pick James, who might be over here in Mills River,
Yeah.
you know, pick somebody that's over in that area and send them to them.
Nice.
Though, I guess a question though, pros and cons versus a radio versus phone, other than the fact that we're going to have dead areas.
Yeah.
You get behind East Fork, you're going to get radio and phone's going to go dead, and you're going to Charles be sitting there and you never move for a little while, you know, and then all of a sudden it catches up. But
Yeah.
I know Zach usually uses the radio. Most of us just use an app on the phone.
Yeah. Well, I think that if whoever's monitoring, as long as they're reading both the APRS and RF side, then it's seamless to them, right? It's really really irrelevant,
Yeah.
and it's really it's better quality information. If you just want to use RF, you know, your beaconing, your beacons may make it 7 out of 10 times in, and you know, but their beacons will be a little bit more frequent because we're trying to be tactical of real time of where everybody's at. And so that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, is like, how can we make it better for the flyer? But my schedule just opened up, so I still need to come talk to you because I would like to help us enhance that.
Yeah.
If you know, if we can do that, and I think that
Yeah.
having somebody who can manage the picture and give information, it'll cut down on radio traffic because you don't have to say, where are you at, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'll know where James is. I'll know that his battery ran out because he stopped beaconing again, right?
Biggest problem I had to say, hey, do you reset your radio or something?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, whoever, you know, we run into that a lot of times where it seems to quit transmitting, you know, and but overall, it's a really great feature to have and be able to tell where people are. And it's nice for those that go to rest stops. You know, I can follow you, and I know you're at the rest stop and know where the rest stop is too on the map.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to have a priority map. You know, we usually use APRS FI, you know, but it'd be kind of nice to have a map that shows
We're
the
gonna-
right ride.
I think we're going to set you up because we can do overlays and graphics. We can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still need to talk to you on that.
No.
Yep. So that's kind of what I have. I'm sorry it came so fast, and so we were just trying to get the information in and everything. It's a great mode. I enjoy it. I enjoy everything from the history of it to where it's going, and I'm looking forward to getting up to speed on some of the new stuff, especially the Meshtastic stuff that's out there. That's kind of the gateway right now for a lot of young people to be coming into hams. If you can speak Meshtastic, they're speaking your language, kind of thing on that, and it's really popped up around this area here, for that. So, any questions or anything for me? No. Okay.
Well, let's just
thank you
give
for your time and attention.
Jay a big round of
Great job.
applause. Extremely well researched.